Okay, I want to do a little demonstration on how to wire the 72 Telecaster Thinline with the double wide range humbuckers. These have actually been switched over to the Fralin P92s, but I'm wiring this guitar up for somebody. And the wiring for this can be a little tricky. And a lot of the diagrams you'll find online, I've actually found that some of them are wrong. So I want to do a pretty clear, simple explanation as to how this gets wired pretty quickly. First thing is, you're going to use two 500K pots here. Usually 500K volume and audio pots are used for humbuckers. They allow them to be slightly brighter. The switch is a three-way switch where you have your neck, your bridge, and then the combination of the two, and the two pots here. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to start grounding the pots together. You're going to need one piece of wire that's slightly longer than the distance between the two pots here, and then I'll show you how to ground this. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is take the wiring you're going to use for this project. I like to use this kind of vintage cloth pushback wire here. It's really good quality wire, and it's real simple to use. You just push back the cloth, and you can just tin the end of the wires, and it's really good stuff. So we're going to take our soldering iron, and you want to make, you can do this on either side of these two pots. I like to do it on this side over here, away from where the input jack wires are going to come in. And what you want to do is you want to take your solder and just put a little tiny pool, touch your soldering gun to the outside of the pot here like this, get it hot, and then just push solder against the side of the pot. Don't put so much on that it runs all down the side of the pot. You don't want to get it under it. And we're going to do the same here. Now you can do this on top of these. I like to do it on the side. This is the same way a Stratocaster gets wired also, as far as grounding the pots together. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to tack this wire on. And sometimes you'll find that it's difficult, that when you take the soldering gun off, the wire will pop off. So just take another tool, hold it until the solder cools. It only takes a second, and you can see that's on there good. You should be able to lift the pick guard off the table. And the reason we made this wire longer is so that we can go like this and push it under out of the way. You don't want it coming out here, because then the pick guard won't lay flat when you screw it down. And then we're going to do this side. And just hold it against it. Let that solder heat up. And then we have the pots grounded now. So one wire going from the side of this pot to the side of this pot. And that basically grounds the two pots together. Once you bring in your input jack and your bridge plate ground wire, then the whole system will be grounded, but we'll get to that in a minute. First thing we want to do is hook up our capacitor to start the rest of this wiring. Usually with humbuckers, they recommend a 0.022 capacitor, and there's a lot of variations of these. This is a really nice paper and oil right here. This is a Black Bee, they're called. And then you have your traditional, like your orange drops. This is also a 0.022. You're going to find these in a lot of Rickenbackers, these little white ones. It doesn't matter what you use. There's a lot of debate online about capacitors, you know, how much of a difference they make as far as when you move up and upgrade quality. You know, this paper and oil right here is about $30, but yet you can get a Sprague orange drop like this for like $3, $4, or $5. So In all honesty, I don't see a tremendous difference in the capacitors as you get to better and better quality. Usually these orange drops are more than fine for most guitar projects. If you do want to upgrade, I wouldn't do anything beyond a paper and oil like this. I mean, 30 bucks for a capacitor. When it gets above that, it just starts to get a little ridiculous in my opinion. So, I'm going to use, let's use this little black B here. This is a .022, and the biggest difference between the .022 and .047, which is most commonly used for single coils, is the .047 is going to be a little bit darker to help tame down some of the single coil shrill treble, and the .022 is going to allow the pickups to be a little bit brighter, which usually you're going to want in the case of humbuckers, which tend to be a little darker. So that, of course, is, you know, there's a lot of debate. Like I said, you're going to hear some people say the exact opposite. But in most cases, you're going to be, as a general kind of starting place, you're going to be just fine using a .022 here for the humbucker. So, and that's what comes in the guitar. So what we're going to do here is the first connection we're going to make with the capacitor, it's going to be from the center tab here of this very bottom pot, which is going to be your tone pot. It's going to be from the center leg over to this first leg all the way on the side over here. So what we're going to do is take our soldering gun, and we're just going to push one end through. You don't want it to come in and touch the pot, just through the center leg, like this. Now, these pots have been used. I'm rewiring this because somebody bought this guitar used and the pickguard was all messed up and the wiring was weird. So it looks like somebody tried to do a number on it themselves. So I'm kind of fixing this for somebody. So these these pot legs here already have solder in the holes. But if you're using brand new pots, just take a little bit of solder and tin the leg of the pot. And what that means is you just heat that little hole a little bit and then just apply solder in there. And it's sort of like tinning it so that it's full of solder, and then all you have to do is heat it and push your wire through. So we have the capacitor here, and it's soldered to that center leg, and that's a good connection. And then the other leg is going to go through this first tab. So we're going to make a little bend in this, and then we're going to push it through. Just going to apply heat and then let it cool. Once it cools and you know you have good contact, just make it nice and neat, like that. Some people will cut the wires. You can cut the wires, the leads on the side of the capacitor. And by the way, it doesn't matter what direction you put this in. These aren't polarized. Some people will cut the leads on the sides to the exact length it needs to be. I don't usually do that. As long as the excess leg is bent out of the way and it's not making any other connections, you're going to be fine. But I tend to leave the excess legs on the capacitor in case I need it for a different project. So this one here is in position. The next connection we're going to make is going to be from this first leg of the tone pot here, straight across to the first leg of the volume pot here. So you just need a short piece of wire. It does help to have a little pair of needle nose or a pair of tweezers so you can grab this, because you don't have much wire to hold on to here. So we're just going to punch this through here. I've already tinned these legs. And remember, you don't want a lot of wire coming through the little hole there, because you don't want to touch anything else. You can see I have one side on, and then what we're going to do is we're going to bend this down out of the way. That's why it helps to have these needle nose. Heat the other side and punch it through. let it cool, and you can see that's a great connection right there. And then I'm just going to bend this middle piece down a little bit out of the way like that. Our next connection that we're going to make is going to go from that same outside tab on our volume pot here, this first leg, and it's going to come over to this very first tab on our switch here on the brown side. And remember, when you put these wires on, you don't want this wire to be stretched ultra tight across this gap up in the air like this. You want to use a little more than necessary so that once it's in, obviously you want it shorter than this piece, but you want it to be able to lay down inside the guitar like that so it's out of the way. Make sure the other little piece you put in there doesn't pop out. And then we're going to wrap this around, come around the pot, and we're going to punch it through this first tab on the switch over here. I'm going to set it in place, and I'm going to actually hit this with a dab of fresh solder here. You can also tin the legs of your switch here. Just put a little bit of solder on them and smooth the solder over top the openings. So that way, again, all you have to do is heat it, push your wire through, and let it cool. All right. Now, our next connection after that, we're going to actually put the pickups in last as far as wiring the pickups, but our next connection now is going to be, we're going to make a jump, and ultimately you can decide how you want to do this. But basically what we're going to do is, we're going to go from where we just connected it on the switch here to the next tab over. Then we're going to cross over across to the other set of tabs, to this one, and then to this one. So you have a jump, jump over, and then to the last one over here. So I wouldn't use one piece of wire for that. I've seen people do that where they kind of like route it through and stretch it. You can, but the chances of it touching something else, in my opinion, is pretty great. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to use this small piece of wire here, and we're going to punch it through this same opening. Some people will also take this first connection we made here with this wire and make it long enough to cross both tabs. You can do it that way too, it doesn't matter. I'm going to jump this over to this side here. I heat that tab, there it goes. And there's our jumper here. And now I'm going to fold this down out of the way, and all we have to do is make two little jumps, one from this tab to this tab on this side, and then one from this tab to this tab on that side. And punch it through right there. And then we're going to do a little bit of fresh solder. Make sure it pushes down in. Cover that hole. Let it cool. Okay, so that side's done. I'm going to push this wire out of the way for a minute. So you can see I made this little green jumper wire here, jumping from the first tab to the second tab, and then we have our black wire from that first from the first tab jumping over to this tab here, and then we're going to make a little jumper between here and here. Make sure everything is firmly soldered. You don't want anything popping off once you put the guitar back together. And again, just to be clear, we came from this tab here to the first tab on the brown side of the switch. We jumped over to the tab next to it. Then we ran a jumper to the other side of the switch next to the last tab, and then ran a jumper over to the first tab. Okay, now to install the pickups, you're going to have 3 main wires on these types of pickups here. Now there's a few different types of pickups out there for the thin line. Sometimes you're going to have the kind of old school braided wire situation, which looks like this. It's almost like Gibson humbucker wire, and in this case, with this type of wiring, you really only have 2 things you have to do. The piece of wire coming out of the inside of this is your hot. The shielding itself, the braided metallic shielding, is actually your ground wire. So what you would do is you would hook the pickup, put the hot wire where it's supposed to go, and then you would literally bring the braided shielding over and shield it to the top of the pot. That acts like your ground wire. On these types of pickups and the ones that come in the guitar, the regular wide range humbuckers, you're going to have a wiring set up like this here, where you have a little thin black wire. That's your hot. And then the bare wire and the white wire get soldered together, and that will get grounded to the top of the pot as your ground, so it'll look like that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the neck, and we're going to take this little black wire of the neck. We just need a little piece, and that's going to go through this very first tab on the plastic side. So the neck pickup is going to come right through here. And again, I heated that solder I already had on the tab, pushed it through, and then let it cool, and you can see that's a good connection. The bridge is going to go to the other side of the switch, this very first tab over here that's unused right now. Again, really check your connections. You don't want to get this whole thing buttoned back up, get all your screws in, your pick guard in position, put the strings on, get it all tuned, just to have it pop off inside the guitar and have to take the whole thing apart again. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the ground wires, which is the bare and white here, in my case, of both of those pickups, and we're going to ground them to the top of the volume pot. Apply solder to the pot and the wires at the same time. You might want to use another tool to hold them down while you take the iron off. I'm going to smooth these down. Let it cool for a second, and now they're grounded. You can see they're really on there. Okay, now that all the wiring is finished for the pickups, now we're ready to bring our guitar body wires in from the jack and the bridge plate and test this pick guard to see if it works. Now, in my case here, I keep a little jack on my bench like this so that I can just plug right into this to test it. If you're not using a test jack like this, you're going to use your actual guitar body wires coming out of your guitar to do this. And you're basically going to have 3 wires. In most cases, you're going to have one negative black wire coming in from your bridge plate. That's going to get grounded here to the top of the volume pot. The other 2 wires you're going to have is one light or white colored wire and one black wire coming from your switch inside your guitar, from your input jack inside your guitar. The black wire, so let's say here, this is your ground wire from your bridge plate. We're going to pretend like this is coming from the bridge plate here. I'm going to ground it right to the top of the pot. And then you're going to take the white wire and you're going to go through the middle tab on the volume pot. So the white wire is going to go right through this middle slot. Don't touch it to the top of the pot. You just want to bring it right through that middle slot. And your ground wire, or your black wire, is going to go to the top of the pot itself, like we did the other ground wires. Now, the pickguard is now wired to your actual guitar body. In my case, it's this test jack, but it would be the same thing. I keep a little test amp on my bench here, so I can just plug into this jack to test these pickguards. But basically, all you're going to do is now plug your guitar in, like this. We're going to flip this over. Lay it gently because you don't want to crush these wires down. I'm going to turn my little amp on. Take any little metal object. I'm going to use this X-Acto knife. And we're just going to test. Right now, let's do full volume, full tone, turned all the way up. And I'm just going to tap. And you can hear that works, but we want to make sure the neck isn't also on. And it's not. You can't hear it. Now, we're going to flip to the neck. No bridge. So that works perfectly. And then the combination in the middle. That works perfectly. Now, I'm just going to flip to the bridge, and we're going to do this. And you can see the volume works perfectly. Okay, and now we're going to do the tone. And you can hear it's real muffled. And now it's real trebly. So everything works fine. I'm going to flip back to the neck and do the tone just to make sure. Works perfectly. Volume. Works perfectly. So now we know that this pickguard is ready to go. So that's it. Now what you do is screw it down, put your strings on, recheck it, make sure everything works fine, and you're good to go.